I want to talk about the Thom Yorke and Miss Rachel situation. What they have in common is that they are two public speaking famous people who have both spoken out in various ways about the ongoing genocide in Gaza as being done by the Israeli military and government. So here's why the Thom Yorke thing is interesting. I'll pull something up. Okay, Radiohead's Thom Yorke. Thom Yorke released a statement about Israel and the war in Gaza. We'll just look at the whole thing. Let me set this up for you. If you are someone who is my age or around my age, then you might think of Thom Yorke as the lead singer and songwriter of Radiohead. And you might think of Radiohead as a popular alternative and experimental rock band who not only made music that pushed genre boundaries and was musically exploratory, but also directly responded to a lot of the depressing events of the first part of the 21st century. For example, with the British and US-led invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, Radiohead was making music about how that sucked. They made music that I think they directly referenced like Naomi Klein's work. They talked about anti-imperialism, anti-militarization. They talked about the ills of capitalism. They were a band that when you listened to them, you felt like there was a correlation between the creativity and the pathos of their art and the political conviction and intelligence of the people that were creating that art, you know, in a way, in a kind of slightly smaller little bitty titty way. They were sort of like British, you know, posh Rage Against the Machine or something like that, in as much as they were a band who was on MTV and were very famous and played arenas and stadiums, who expressed anti-imperialist, anti-authoritarian, anti-capitalist beliefs. A few caveats. One caveat: Radiohead initially blew up because of their success on Israeli radio. I'm pretty sure it was Creep. Someone in the chat might correct me if I am wrong. So, you know, they had the success in Israel. And there's also, of course, the fact that Johnny Greenwood, a guitar player, multi-instrumentalist from Radiohead, who's also, if you're a film head, the composer, I think on every Paul Thomas Anderson film since There Will Be Blood. He's married to an Israeli artist and has worked with another Israeli artist on some projects. I think it was in 2017. Radiohead did some shows in Tel Aviv and people were like, no bueno, big dogs. And they were like, whoa, it's fine. We'll play Israel. It's okay. You know, it's politics. And then you say, so fuck it. So, you know, there's been some tension around Radiohead's politics relative to the situation in Israel, in particular, their occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. Ever heard of it? Thom Yorke was doing some solo shows last year in Australia. Shout out to the Australians. We respect you. And in one of the shows that Tom did in Australia, there's a guy who was like, "Oi, mate." I don't know. I can't do Australian. I'm sorry for any Australian. I can't do your accent. I can just say like, bah. I went to the bar. That's probably not it. But someone in Australia, maybe it was one of you, was like, hey, man, maybe say something. Hey, Mr. In Touch political guy, maybe say something about Gaza. And then Thom Yorke was just like, no one wants to hear about it. Come here and say, oh, fuck it. And he's like left the show. You can look up the clip if you want. So he finally put out a statement. Oh, yeah. And here's in Australia last year, he said, some guy shouted at me from the dark last year while I was picking up a guitar to sing the final song alone. Oh, yeah. That's just from the statement. So let's just read his statement. Okay. And I would say this. When this statement came out, I was initially excited. I'll tell you why I was initially excited. Because Ed O'Brien of Radiohead, my favorite member of Radiohead, is it because he has an Irish name? A little bit. Is it because he's the nicest to look at? A little bit as well. Radiohead's not a good looking band, is what it is. Ed O'Brien's a solid looking guy. But Ed O'Brien has historically been the more outwardly progressive member of the band in recent years. Ed O'Brien from Radiohead is the one who signed a letter recently that a bunch of UK actors and artists and musicians and stuff signed to oppose the British government's support of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And a couple days after Ed O'Brien had posted that, he reposted a statement from Thom Yorke. And I was like, oh shit, great. Maybe Thom Yorke's finally going to be like, hi guys, I was a little bit weird about this, but genocide's bad, killing kids is bad or something. But guys, that's not what happened. I'm going to try to not do the accent for the entire thing. I'm going to try, but I'm not going to promise you that I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to try, but I won't promise you that I'm not occasionally going to do an offensive British accent. Now, why am I allowed to do that accent? A, they're in imperialist state who killed my ancient relatives. So, you know, fuck them. Two, I used to live in that country and I was a resident there and I paid taxes in that country. And when you pay taxes in a country, you're allowed to do the accent with some limitations. So he said, some guy shouted at me from the dark last year and I was picking up a guitar to sing the final song alone in front of 9,000 people. Weird flex, bro. In Melbourne, didn't seem like the best moment to discuss the unfolding. And this is when like I kind of knew it was going to be bad when I saw humanitarian catastrophe. Because when we see humanitarian catastrophe, to me at least, that implies like, okay, so for example, there's a big hurricane, and after the hurricane, people can't get access to food or water. And because of where the hurricane happened, supplies aren't able to get there. It happens in an impoverished country where they're unable to get those supplies. That is a humanitarian catastrophe. It's some natural event has happened that have left human beings, in a sense, like unintentionally suffering. That's at least what I think of when I think of humanitarian catastrophe. Also, when you say ancient relatives got killed by the British, it's almost just like anyone, but then because of my melanin and my complexion, yeah, Irish. He says, afterwards, I remained in shock that my supposed silence is somehow being taken as complicity. I struggled to find an adequate way to respond to this and carry on with the rest of the shows on the tour. Way to make it about you, bro. Way to make it about you. And also Dave Matthews of Dave Matthews Band. Am I a big Dave Matthews Band fan musically? Not really, but Dave Matthews is doing a summer tour in America, playing in front of tens of thousands of people, playing to way more people than Thom Yorke's currently playing in front of. And he's holding up signs at the end of the show that say, stop killing kids, end the genocide. It's not hard. Who would have thought, fellow old millennial people, if I would have told you in the year 2000, you know who's going to be way more politically progressive when we are deep adults? Dave Matthews and not Thom Yorke. You'd have said, shut up, poser. Go download LimeWire. Go to LimeWire. But I would have been right. So he was in shock. That silence, my attempt to show respect for all those who are suffering and those who have died, and to not trivialize it in a few words, right before he trivializes it in a lot of words, has allowed other opportunistic groups to use intimidation and defamation to fill in the blanks. And I regret giving them this chance. Is that a heavy toll on my mental health? Aww. Little baby mental health hot. And again, I try to be really empathetic, guys. I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be those guys just like a dick on the internet. But Thom Yorke is a really successful, very famous, incredibly wealthy musician. And it's been hard for him. He is the victim in this particular instance because he's mad that people got mad at him for not being able to say something as simple as like, you could just say like, I condemn the genocide in Gaza. I condemn the killing of innocent kids. Like, it's not that hard. Have Beard Will Travel in the chat does importantly bring up that once Dave Matthews Band was driving their bus through the city of Chicago. Was it on like the bridge on like Wabash or something? They had, they have like a tour bus, and they dropped their shit from the tour bus off a bridge in Chicago. And I think it landed on a boat of people. Also, if you're ever in Chicago, the best tourist thing you can do in America is the architectural boat tour in Chicago. He says, I would hope that for anyone who's ever listened to a note of the music in my band or any of the music I've created or looked at the artwork or read the lyrics, it would be self-evident that I could not possibly support any form of extremism or dehumanization of others. And that's what many of us have thought, right? Most of us feel like, yeah, dude, the output and the creative work of your band and things you've written and said make us feel like we're allowed to expect you to be on the right side of history. All I see is a lifetime's worth of work with my fellow musicians and artists and pushing against such things, trying to create work that goes beyond what it means to be controlled, coerced, threatened, to suffer. So just like against the vibe of Israeli politics and the Israeli military. And instead to encourage critical thinking beyond borders, the commonality of love and experience, and free creative expression. I gotta say this one in a British accent because it's like a British phrase. Sounds naff, but true. It sounds naff, isn't it? Isn't it sound naff? Shout out to the big Radiohead massive. For others, let me fill in the blanks. Now, so we're nice and clear. He sounds like such a prick. Let me fill in the blanks so we're nice and clear. I think Netanyahu and his crew of extremists are totally out of control. Netanyahu and his crew of extremists, you mean the Israeli government and military? You mean the literal political edifice of the state? And let's be clear too. Shout out to all the brave people in Israel right now who are fighting back against their government, who are protesting, risking getting shit beat out of them, standing in solidarity with the Palestinian neighbors. Shout out to the young people who are like, I don't want to join the IDF. I'll go to jail, please. I would rather do jail, please, than have you tell me to go to some village and kill kids. I'm just going to go to jail, please. Thank you. Shout out to those people. They need to be stopped. The international community should put all the pressure it can on them to cease. To cease what? Their excuse of self-defense is long since worn thin and has been replaced by a transparent desire to take control of Gaza and the West Bank permanently. Yeah, they want to take control of it, and they also want to kill everyone who's there. There's a word for it, Thom Yorke. I believe this ultra-nationalist administration is hidden behind terrified and grieving people and use them to deflect any criticism, using that fear and grief to further their ultra-nationalist agenda with terrible consequences, as we now see with the horrific blockade of aid to Gaza. So it's just the blockade of aid. That's the main thing for you, Thomas and Yorkinson. The main thing is the blockade of aid. Are you sure? Thom, could there be something else? While our lives tick along as normal, these endless thousands of innocent human souls are still being expelled from the earth. For what? At the same time, the unquestioning Free Palestine refrain. Gotta get my Taylor Swift style Free Palestine bracelet on for this one. Check this shit out. This is pretty good. That's pretty cool. Shout out to the person on Etsy that I got this from. It's the time that I used Etsy. I've used Etsy twice to get Free Palestine Taylor Swift style bracelet and to get some Irish theme shirts. Someone said, why are you angry, Michael? Why are you mad at him? He is right. Oh, no, Thom Yorke's not right, dog. He is actually not right. I'm very sorry that he's not right. I'm very sorry. You can still like Radiohead's music. And I'll be honest with you guys. I have a band I play in. We're playing a show in LA Friday night. If you're in LA, come to our show on Friday. Seriously, it'd be nice to meet any of you. But we're playing a bit of a Radiohead song at that show. So whatever. But yeah, Free Palestine is, I think the idea that he's saying that anyone who uses it is he says it's at the same time, the unquestioning Free Palestine refrain that surrounds us all does not answer the simple question of why the hostages have not been returned. You can both, I think, be able to express concern, empathy, sympathy for people who are hostages in a horrific situation without then throwing Free Palestine as a movement under the bus. I think you're all smart enough to do that. But yeah, so Thom Yorke quickly then pivots to saying, after seeming like he's going to go someplace maybe solid with this, he critiques the unquestioning refrain of Free Palestine, which like, who do you think is unquestioning? And I think for a lot of people, I guess I'll speak to myself. In the chat, you let me know if this is what you think or this is not what you think or whatever it is. Most people, when they say Free Palestine, they're just saying like, let the people of Palestine, let Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza have political freedom, will, and autonomy, which they currently do not have. Let them exist as free people. Let them vote in elections. Let them have the same social, political, religious, educational, business rights, opportunities that everyone else in the space does. Give them the right to self-determination. So then he goes and he says, why did Hamas choose the truly horrific acts of October 7th? I'm just going to say this. In this letter, he quickly pivots to be way more like, what about Hamas? After he's just like, oh yeah, Netanyahu's bad. Note that he doesn't specify Israel. He doesn't specify Netanyahu's party or anything like that. It's just like Netanyahu is bad. But then, yeah. So why does Hamas choose the truly horrific acts of October 7th? And note, I'm not Hassan Piker, so I'm not going to sit here and defend Hamas. That's a joke. I know he didn't really do that, but some people on the internet, they get mad all the time, say stuff like that. The answer seems obvious, and I believe Hamas chooses to hide behind the suffering of its people in an equally cynical fashion for their own purposes. I also think there's a further extremely important point to make. Social media witch hunts, nothing new on either side, pressurizing artists and whoever they feel like that week to make statements to very little except heightened tension. If you've paid attention, I've paid some attention to how artists, musicians, actors have been affected in the wake of October 7th. Many artists and musicians and actors and people who have stood up for Palestinian people have been punished professionally. I can't see a lot of examples where it has happened on the other side. There's examples where people have said stuff and other people are like, I disagree with you. I think that's a bad take. Okay, the game is the game. It says the kind of deliberate polarization does not serve our fellow human beings and perpetuates a constant use of us versus them mentality. It's this weird, here's the thing, guys. He made an entire album. Thom Yorke made an entire album called Hail to the Thief and his band Radiohead. It is a good album. And let me say this too. I'm saying all this. Radiohead's one of the best bands of my freaking lifetime, and I'm not going to deny that. Hail to the Thief is an album about how Tony Blair was a fucking crook. Now, Tony Blair was a third-way liberal. Third-way liberalism, what's that? Third-way liberalism's vibe is like, deliberate polarization, us versus them mentality. That's bad. So let's have a third way. Let's not us versus them it. Let's not say right, wrong, good, bad, genocide, not genocide. Let's find a nice liberal third path where everyone can be right in their own special way. So he's doing the thing. He's doing that very thing. Destroys hope and maintains a sense of isolation. The very things that extremists use to maintain their position. He does a thing too where he kind of acts like what Hamas does and what is like represented by Hamas is somehow categorically different and worse than the genocidal acts being perpetuated by the Israeli government. If our world is ever to be able to move on from these dark times and find peace, it will only be able to rediscover what we share in common. And the extremists are sent back to sit in the darkness from whence they came. Oh, whence? We get it. You're from Oxford. You are from the same place as C.S. Lewis and J.R.R.R.R.R. Tolkien. Cool, man. You said whence. It's just crazy, too, that this guy has to put out a multi-paragraphical, that's an English word, statement to kind of say nothing. And there's so many other artists and musicians, and we're going to get into this. So many people are finding it so simple to just unequivocally say that genocide is bad and killing kids is bad. Dave Matthews, he wakes up in the morning, crash into, like it's, people can do it. Miss Rachel. I don't know any Miss Rachel videos. My kid's not allowed to watch that, but shout out to Miss Rachel. I like what she's doing. It's not hard to just kind of say the right thing here. And it's not hard to say the right thing in a way that still acknowledges the humanity of everyone. I sympathize completely with the desire to do something. We're witnessing such horrific acts on our devices. It makes sense. but I now think it is a dangerous illusion to believe reposting or 1 or 2 line messages are meaningful, especially if it's condemned your fellow human beings. There are unintended consequences. But it's not like, are we like stopping a genocide if we post about it? We're not, okay? We're not. But is there a world by which we are able to at least contribute to a shift in the discourse? Then yeah. But all I'd say is, like, I think that he's just kind of saying, like, he didn't say anything and people were mean to him about not saying anything, so he's a victim. It is shouting from the darkness. It's not looking people in the eye when you speak. It is making dangerous assumptions. It is not debate, and it is not critical thinking. And I know about debate. I'm from Oxford. Oxford invented debate. Oxford invented debate. Hence, whence, yence, tense, lence, debate. Importantly, it is open to online manipulation of all kinds, both mechanistic and political. What is he complaining about? So what is the alternative? I can't answer that easily. I do know in communities around the globe, the subject is now dangerously toxic and we're in uncharted water. We need to turn back. Turn back to what, Thomas? I'm sure that to this point, what I've written here will in no way satisfy those who choose to target myself or those I work with. They will spend time picking holes and looking for reason to continue. We are an opportunity not to be missed, no doubt, by either side. Stop being a baby. Like, again, Ed O'Brien from Radiohead signed a letter condemning the genocide and the participation of the U.S. military in it. The U.K. government. I mean, U.S. too, but he's a British guy. Easy. I've written this in the simple hope that I can join with the many millions of others praying for the suffering isolation. Oh, pray. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers, Tom. It just sucks when people get old and they get so washed. Maybe this is the advantage of me being an ADHD-riddled man-child who's not responsible, is that I get older. I haven't gotten washed yet with opinions. If it ever happens, come for me hard. One day soon, this darkness will have passed. So that's Thom Yorke's statement. That's Thom Yorke's statement on the situation. Yeah, Grog Max said in the chat, both sides bad. Thom Yorke, 200 IQ. Now, I already don't like this. I don't like this situation. I am annoyed because an artist who I like a lot and who I respect a lot has kind of pussyfooted and third wayed a very significant historical issue. It makes me sad that an artist I respect a lot doesn't seem to be standing by the principles that were in his art. Here's what is even harder to deal with, guys. For other people, it's not hard. Other individuals seem to be able to respond to the current situation with moral clarity. And I'll tell you this, guys, we'll talk about Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel has gotten way more backlash than Thomas Yorke. Way more. Miss Rachel, a seemingly nice lady who makes children's content, who I think was a teacher, shout out to teachers, has been come at pretty hard by the entire media and lots of people online for saying crazy shit like don't kill kids. Thom Yorke, some people got mad at him because they were like, hey man, you're an artist who's meant a lot to many of us in our lives. In many ways, your art might have helped give some of us moral clarity and direction. And it makes us really sad that at this time where so many people seem to be willing to risk some of their privilege to stand with or on the side of marginalized individuals, people are just disappointed. And again, so many artists, again, like crash into me. Dave Matthews has found moral clarity here and he's been fine. Roger Waters, weird, funny old guy, he's been fine. And of course, Miss Rachel. So let's check this out, guys. For those of you who don't know anything about Miss Rachel, here's the deal. She's a person who makes YouTube videos. Shout out to my colleague, Miss Rachel, that a bazillion people watch, and her content is aimed at helping kids. I know about stuff like Coco Melon, and I know that Coco Melon is like animation that's designed to like cut every 3 seconds and turn your child's brain into like cottage cheese ADHD duty. I don't think that's what Miss Rachel does. I think Miss Rachel makes videos to try to connect with kids and teach them stuff. And I know that for better or worse, just for worse, a lot of parents are really stressed and overworked. There's lots of people that can't afford childcare in America. So I do think it's kind of like a necessary, I don't even want to say evil, but a necessary thing that parents sometimes need content that their kids can watch that will not destroy their brains. Shout out Sesame Street and things of that nature. Now, Miss Rachel, we'll look at this article from The Guardian. She is willing to risk her career to keep advocating for suffering children in Gaza. Thom Yorke got a little bit of pushback. Thom Yorke had some people that were like, hey man, just say this is bad. Hi mate, just say this is bad. Thom Yorke made it about him. Miss Rachel is making it about kids in Gaza. In an interview with Woober, a Boston-based public radio station, Miss Rachel's full name is Rachel Griffin Accurso, sounds kind of Italian-y, said she'd received pushback for speaking out to raise awareness of the situation in Gaza, where more than 54,000 people have been killed in Israelis' ongoing military assault. But she said, like Tom Petty, she won't back down. I wouldn't be Miss Rachel. I didn't deeply care about all kids, and I would risk everything. I will risk my career over and over to stand up for them. It's all about the kids for me. They're killing kids, guys. And I'm not one of those people who's out here. I'm not going to like show you pictures of amputee kids and stuff like that. That's a choice that I think you have the right to decide. That's the thing you see when you get on the internet to abstract from the world. But it's very bad. And Miss Rachel is someone whose entire career is about kids. Now, I think that Thom Yorke, at a certain point, you could say that much of his career was about creating art that pushed back against militarism, authoritarianism, the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, other wars where opportunistic Western powers used narratives that were largely constructed, some of which were completely false, to wield political power in a destabilized region for their own gain. I'm just saying. The UN has described Gaza as the hungriest place on earth and warned that the Palestinian territory's entire population is at risk of famine. She said she recently met with Palestinian women whose children are suffering in Gaza. When you sit with a mother who's FaceTiming her boys in Gaza who don't have food and you see that anguish, it really moves you. I'm sorry to get emotional, to do everything you can. That's just horrible. It's just, I don't want to get too emotional because I don't want people to make fun of me because I'm just a prideful baby, but my God. And she says, of course, I need to do more. What can I do to help? I have a big platform and I have a responsibility. I mean, and listen, she's spoken publicly about this. She had a Palestinian child who's an amputee on her show and sang and danced with her and stuff like that. And she showed love to that child. She's doing good stuff. It says in April, a pro-Israel group urged the U.S. Attorney General to investigate Curso over her messaging about children suffering in Gaza. She's been criticized by right-wing media and commentators. The government, guys. Like Thom Yorke is mad that people like us are like, grow a pair, big dog. Miss Rachel is being investigated and harassed by the U.S. government. Israeli groups are looking into her and implying that she's like pro-Hamas. Go look at the shit she's saying. She's just like, genocide is bad. Don't kill kids, Asked about the criticism, she said, it's really painful. And I have to remind myself that people don't know my heart and people try to tell you who you are, but you know who you are. And I know how deeply and equally I care for all children. And I do lean on my faith in that situation. I care so deeply about every child. As a teacher, you have children from many different places, especially in New York City, and you care exactly the same about them. That's the basis of everything it is for me, is that children are equal. Now, look at this. She is being criticized, I would say, way more harshly than Thom Yorke. She also has a government coming after her. She also has well-funded, Israeli backing, U.S. special interest groups coming at her. And she'll say, like, yeah, this sucks for me. But what does she pivot to? It sucks for me, but it's about the kids. She doesn't make it about her. Doesn't make it about her. She said in May 2024 that she had faced bullying after launching a fundraiser for children in Gaza, Sudan, Ukraine, and Democratic Republic of Congo. In April, she donated $1 million. Bro, that's sick. Also, you make $1 million doing kids content? Which provides meals for starving people in Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, and 11 other impoverished countries after the Trump administration said it would end funding of the program. So, like, she's being attacked by the government, and then she's just like, oh, I didn't have the article up when I was looking at all that. My bad, guys. The government cuts funding to starving children around the world while attacking an ex-teacher and children's content maker. And then she takes $1 million and sends it to the groups that our government won't fund. Lori Christian said, Mr. Rogers will be proud. Do you guys remember that Mr. Rogers got canceled because he washed a black man's feet? It's like in the 80s or something like that. There's the mailman, right? It was a black guy. And Mr. Rogers like washed his feet in an episode, and people were so pissed. They were like, my children. Yeah, Mr. Rogers. Oh, is it a mail or a fireman? Was it a cop? Never mind then. I'm kidding. But yeah, Mr. Rogers washed a black guy's feet on his show. Or he's like a park ranger. And people were so mad. People lost their friggin' minds. In the same way, now people are losing their minds because Miss Rachel is like, don't kill kids. People are just weird. But you know what? All that said, I'm probably going to still listen to more Radiohead than I do Miss Rachel. It's not about the fish. Oh, it's about the integrated swimming pool. There you go. Yeah, because you can't swim in a pool with people of different races, because that's, why is it bad? Someone tell me in the chat why it's bad. Use your full name. Tell me your address and tell me why that's bad. It's all good. No one will care. No one will judge you. It's all good.